HOA Karen dumped trash into my disabled daughter's wheelchair. She didn't know I'm a legal enforcer. Part 1. I didn't expect to come home from work to the smell of sour milk and rotting food. I didn't expect to find my daughter's wheelchair. Her lifeline filled to the brim with trash. But that's exactly what I found. A pile of garbage stuffed between the cushions, tangled in her seatbelt, dripping down the wheels like a cruel joke played in silence. And standing just 20 feet away pretending she didn't see was a woman I'd hoped we'd never cross paths with again. They call her Karen. I call her something else, the reason I keep my credentials ready at the door. My name is Malcolm Barrett. I'm a civil enforcement counsel with the Office of Legal Compliance for the State Department of Human Rights. That's a long-winded way of saying I investigate public violations of disability law and enforce legal remedies when rights are trampled. I spend my days shutting down businesses that fail ADA audits, representing families in federal court whose children are discriminated against by schools, and drafting legislation to hold cities accountable for accessible design. But none of that prepared me for what happened in my own driveway. We moved to Lakeview Pines 4 months ago, a quiet tree-lined neighborhood in the foothills just outside Sacramento. Wide sidewalks, cul-de-sacs filled with chalk drawings, families who waved, HOA newsletters with dog photos. It looked safe. It looked like it could hold us. I chose it for my daughter, Ellie. Ellie is 10. She has osteogenesis imperfecta, brittle bone disease. She uses a lightweight adaptive wheelchair with custom sidebars, stability locks, and a hand-modified tray. She designed herself with our neighbor's 3D printer. She paints in that chair. She eats in that chair. She thrives in that chair. And now someone had used it like a dumpster. I didn't raise my voice. Didn't throw anything. Didn't need to. I just looked at the woman across the driveway, blonde bob tennis visor, tight pink hoodie with a fake HOA badge clipped to it, and said, "Did you put trash in my daughter's wheelchair?" She blinked once as if caught off guard that I was addressing her directly. "Oh, that shouldn't be left outside. It's cluttering the street. We have visual standards here." I stared at her. "You dumped garbage into medical equipment." "It's not medical," she snapped. It's a mobility tool, and it was left outside unattended. I assumed it was discarded." I took a step forward. "You assumed wrong." She shrugged. "Well, maybe next time, put it away properly. We have rules." She turned and walked back toward her driveway, clipboard swinging. Chin lifted, no apology. Like what she did wasn't violence. Ellie wasn't home when it happened. She was at art class with my sister. Thank God, because I can't imagine her coming home to that sight. Her freedom defiled, her custom vinyl seat ruined. Her independence violated by the very community that had promised her belonging. I snapped photos, every angle, every bag, every drip of sauce and crumpled napkin wedged in the spokes. Then I opened the garage, got the cleaning gloves, and documented the entire cleanup process with timestamps. By the time Ellie got home, the chair was spotless, but I wasn't. That night I stayed up late building a file. Not a police report, not yet. First a legal one. I pulled public HOA records, Karen's name, Marla Wellington, self-appointed visual oversight representative. No formal election, no city registration, and no authority. Just printed badges and a compliance team of one. She'd created her own bylaws, issued warnings in Times New Roman, left yellow notices of visual disruption on anything that didn't meet her invisible standard, plastic flamingos, warning air conditioning units, warning ramps, warning wheelchairs, apparently garbage. The next day I filed a formal complaint with the City Access Board. Then I sent a letter on official letterhead to the HOA president outlining what had occurred and demanding a formal investigation into harassment targeting a disabled minor. An audit of all compliance notices issued by non-board members. A public statement affirming the rights of disabled residents under ADA Title II. Immediate disciplinary action against Ms. Wellington. I signed it Malcolm Barrett-esque Disability Rights Enforcement Council. Then I emailed a copy to the entire HOA mailing list. The first reply came from Camille on Juniper Lane. She flagged my son's leg braces as a visual tripping hazard. 2 months ago, I thought I was crazy. Then Bob, 2 doors down, she said my wife's oxygen tank made the porch look like a hospital. And then a flurry of others. One by one they came forward, parents, caretakers, seniors, who had been policed, intimidated, or shamed by Karen's fake authority. Not with violence, but with paper flyers taped to walkers, violations slipped under doors, whispers passed around play dates. She wasn't enforcing the law. She was inventing it, but this time she picked the wrong family. Because I write laws and I burn fakes to the ground. Part 2. The next morning I received 14 emails before 8:00 a.m. Some were short. Thank you for standing up. We've been quiet too long. She left a violation slip in my mailbox for a planter box. My mother's walker was tagged as unsightly mobility furniture. She cried. Some were long, personal, painful, from families like ours, from veterans, from caretakers of children with disabilities, from cancer survivors who'd had to explain to their kids why someone taped a warning to their home oxygen machine. Karen hadn't been keeping the neighborhood beautiful. She had been systematically targeting visibility. Anything that looked different and calling it disruption. I compiled the testimonials into a single document, 26 entries by noon. Each included a description of the event, a scanned image or photo of Karen's notice, and a brief statement of how it made the resident feel. We titled it The Blue File Documented Cases of Disability-Based Harassment in Lakeview Pines. Then I forwarded it to the State Disability Rights Commission attached to my own formal complaint. At 2:37 p.m., my phone rang. Mr. Barrett. This is Director Salgado from the SDRC. I've reviewed your file. Her voice was clear, sharp, interested. You know, most complaints don't arrive with full documentation, timestamps, and community testimony attached, right? I chuckled. I'm thorough. Clearly, we're opening an investigation. I'll be contacting your HOA and the local ADA coordinator by end of day. And Karen, if the evidence checks out, she'll be cited for targeted harassment under Section 504 and potentially civil penalties for impersonation of municipal authority. Exactly what I wanted to hear, but I wasn't done. That evening, I walked to the neighborhood mail kiosk. It was quiet, warm sprinklers ticking in the distance. And there she was, Karen, holding a stack of new flyers. She froze when she saw me, but this time I didn't stop. I walked straight up. Passing out more fake rules today, she stiffened. These are legitimate residents, need guidance. They support it. They don't. Not anymore. In fact, I have statements from dozens of them now. Her eyes narrowed. You're turning this into a witch hunt. No, Marla. You already did. I'm just writing the report. She stepped forward, voice rising. You think just because you're some legal hotshot, you get to rewrite the community standards? I smiled calmly. I don't rewrite the law, I enforce it. And you're about to learn what that means. I pulled out my phone, scrolled to the PDF of the blue file, flipped the screen so she could see the title. She didn't say a word. That night, Camille organized an emergency community meeting at the local rec center. We expected 20 people. 63 showed up. Folding chairs filled the hall. Some neighbors brought their kids. One elderly man came with a portable oxygen tank his wife wheeled beside him. At the front, I projected the blue file. Camille introduced me, and I spoke. I moved here because I believed in this place I began. I believed it would accept my daughter, that it would be more than manicured lawns and dog stations. I didn't expect to find a woman acting as judge and jury on who belongs. I clicked through the cases, the notices, the photos. She wasn't upholding the law. She was abusing your silence, but now she doesn't own the narrative anymore. You do. When I finished, no one clapped. They stood, not in celebration. In solidarity, Camille took the mic. I thought I was crazy. I thought it was just me. Bob followed. She fined my wife for planting sunflowers, called them a visibility hazard. A man from the back stepped forward. I'm not disabled, but my son is autistic. She told me to quiet him down or she'd file a complaint. She said he was disruptive, and then Trina. She took my son's walker and hid it behind the rec center trash bins. By the end, we had nearly 100 documented incidents. Karen hadn't just crossed a line, she'd paved her own road to destruction. The HOA board was forced to respond. They issued an emergency suspension of all visual compliance activities. They banned the distribution of notices not formally approved. They stripped Karen of any remaining volunteer role. And most importantly, they held a public vote. Should all compliance activity be reviewed through a new Equity and Accessibility Committee? The vote passed 72-2. Camille and I were appointed co-chairs. 2 days later, a city investigator knocked on Karen's door. She didn't answer, so they posted the citation notice publicly. Notice of violation, civil harassment, and ADA interference. You are hereby ordered to cease and desist all conduct relating to enforcement of community aesthetics or accessibility. Your conduct has resulted in demonstrable harm to protected groups. It was posted to the community message board by Sunrise, the same board Karen used to post her visual disruption alerts. Now her name was the disruption. Ellie noticed the change first. People started waving more. Kids smiled wider. A neighbor we'd never met dropped off new arm padding for her wheelchair custom print. She said so no one can say it doesn't belong. Even the mailman left a note. Thanks for holding it down, sir. My niece's chair got tagged last year in another neighborhood. Glad someone's finally saying something. We weren't afraid of her anymore. We were redefining the rules she pretended to own. Part 3. Karen didn't go quietly. Bullies rarely do. 3 days after the city investigator posted the violation, she showed up at the HOA's monthly meeting with a freshly printed folder. A legal pad filled with notes and a shaking voice that still somehow carried the shrill edge of entitlement. This is a witch hunt, she said, pacing in front of the folding chairs. A coordinated smear campaign against a woman trying to protect the visual standards of this community. She gestured to her printouts. These aren't harassment notices. They're community engagement tools. I stood near the back wall, arms crossed, let her finish. She raised a single flyer, one of her infamous visual compliance advisories. This is about order, harmony, safety. If we let clutter, improper equipment, and unstable modifications define our neighborhood, then we're no better than the rundown areas outside this district. That was it. The quiet in the room snapped. Camille stood. You mean my son's braces, someone else, or my mother's cane? Another voice, Bob's, or my wife's flower pots? Because they're pink, Karen faltered. She pointed at me, and he's the one stirring this up. Just because he's a lawyer doesn't mean he can change everything. I stepped forward. I didn't change anything. Karen, I enforced what's already there. Laws you either never read or chose to ignore. I held up her flyer, then my DOJ credentials. Your paper is fake. This badge is real. That night the board voted unanimous. Karen was banned from all HOA activities. Any use of neighborhood property for distributing material, entering any neighbor's property without written consent, speaking at any future community meeting without approval. Her Visual Standards Task Force was dissolved. A new standing rule was created. All neighborhood actions must follow 8 FHA and civil rights statutes. No exceptions. We called it the Ellie Clause. But Karen wasn't finished. The next morning, every driveway received a bright red flyer. Attention. Legal threats are destroying our community. Your freedom is at risk. Your safety is compromised. Do you want this place to become a lawless dumping ground? The bottom of the page read, "We must fight back. Join me." No one did, because that same morning the Sacramento Journal published their front page story, "Fake HOA Leader Accused of Disability Harassment." Targeted 27 families in 6 months. They used her real name. They quoted our blue file. They included a statement from Ellie. She made me feel like my chair made me wrong. And then my quote. This wasn't about rules. It was about control. And control without compassion is just cruelty wearing a badge. Karen tried to sue me, filed a civil defamation claim for emotional distress. It lasted 2 hearings. Then the judge dismissed it with prejudice and warned her against weaponizing the court system to maintain the illusion of power. That should have been the end. But sometimes justice needs one more push. Late October, the city finalized its ruling. Karen was fined $15,000 in civil penalties, $2,500 in restitution to Ellie, ordered to complete a 12-week disability awareness and ADA law course, banned from initiating or distributing any materials related to visual community standards within city limits for 5 years. The final clause said it all. The respondent's behavior reflected an abuse of social position, not legal authority. Such behavior erodes public trust and will not be tolerated. Karen sold her home 2 weeks later. No goodbye, no remorse, just a moving truck and a quickly withdrawn listing from every online site. One neighbor said they saw her crying in the driveway. Another said she muttered, "They were supposed to listen to me," but no one did not anymore. Ellie's new chair arrived in early November, a surprise gift. The community pooled donations after the article went live. It was navy blue with chrome accents and a custom decal. Ellie chose herself. This seat doesn't roll alone. She took it for its first ride that weekend, down the block, past porches, past where Karen once watched with a clipboard, and every house she passed waved. The HOA asked me to draft the new Code of Community Conduct. I kept it simple: respect differences. No authority without transparency. Accessibility is non-negotiable. Every resident has the right to exist fully and visibly. We passed it with a 94% vote. The other 6% abstained. Karen notably wasn't around to object. People sometimes ask me what it was like to bring down someone like her. They think I felt vindicated, powerful. But the truth, I felt relieved. Not because she lost, but because Ellie saw a community that chose her over silence. I hung Karen's final flyer in my home office. Framed not as a trophy, but as a reminder of what fear looks like when it puts itself in charge. And what courage looks like when it finally says, "You don't speak for us." Part 4, Karen thought a community was a place you controlled. She thought it was about uniform lawns and hushed sidewalks, about regulating what didn't look like her, about keeping everything visible, but only if it looked acceptable. But here's what she didn't understand. A real community protects the people who can't blend in, not hides them, not silences them, not punishes them for existing, protects them. And by the time she was gone, we weren't just living on the street, we were rebuilding it. 6 months after Karen left, the HOA hosted the first ever Lakeview Visibility Festival. No theme, no rules about colors, noise, or aesthetics. Just one purpose: to celebrate every single resident who had ever been told they didn't belong. It was Ellie's idea. She called it Seen and Strong. The street filled with tables and music and adaptive art, wheelchair-accessible games, sensory-friendly lighting zones, a bake-off judged by kids with speech devices. One wall of the rec center was turned into a community canvas. Everyone got a brush. At the center, Ellie painted her message. Not just welcome, wanted below it, a small handprint, hers painted in gold, and surrounding it dozens of others, from neighbors, friends, strangers, even Bob, who wore his army cap and said, "I fought for this kind of freedom, you know." When the mayor stopped by, she asked me what had changed. I pointed to the mural and said that not the paint I added, the fact that nobody's asking if it's allowed. But the most powerful moment came when Ellie took the mic. She was taller now, more confident. Her new chair gleamed under the sunlight like a monument of steel and strength. She rolled to the center of the crowd and spoke without notes. Some of you knew what she was doing. Some of you didn't. But now we all do, and we don't need someone like that to tell us what makes a neighborhood safe. She paused, then pointed to a nearby child with cochlear implants playing with a light-up fidget cube. He's safe. I'm safe. You're safe when we all are. Karen tried to shrink this place. We made it bigger. The applause didn't stop. Later that night, I found Ellie sitting by the curb, tracing the wheels of her chair with her fingers. Thinking, I asked, sitting beside her. Always, she said, "Then do you think she'll ever come back?" I thought for a second. If she does, she'll come back to a place that's different, a place that doesn't bend anymore. Ellie nodded good. Then she added, "I don't want revenge. I want other kids to never feel what I felt. And I want people like her to feel what we feel now." Belonging. We didn't name the bench after her. We named it after Ellie. A plaque was installed by the pool where it all started. The Ellie bench, for those who refused to disappear and for those who learned to see them. Every week since then, someone new has sat there. Some bring flowers, some bring tears, some bring questions they never asked before, and some just sit in silence. But none of them bring clipboards. Karen's name faded, as it should, not erased, but outgrown. Ellie still paints. Her work's been featured in 2 art shows for youth with disabilities. She started a blog, Wheels and Words. She wants to study public policy when she gets older, maybe even civil rights law. She says she wants to write laws that feel more like doors than fences. I asked her once what she'd say to Karen if they ever met again. She shrugged. "I'd say you tried to close the gate, but you didn't see who you were locking inside." People like Karen don't understand what they're afraid of, so they try to erase it, control it, contain it, but we're not afraid anymore because we know what she didn't. That power isn't paper, authority isn't volume, and community isn't compliance. It's presence, it's protection. It's the simple act of letting others be seen. And now Ellie's chair sits clean, polished, moving always forward. Desuri kindasitint.